I apologize. We were having technical difficulties here. You're excused from this panel, but thank you very much. You don't have to go back upstairs, okay? So you can just leave. All right? But thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate you responding to the summons. Have a great rest of the day, okay?
Hello.
Please have a seat, and you may take your mask off while you're in the witness chair. Okay, so thank you for filling out the questionnaire. You provided very specific answers. It looks like you've read and seen a lot of news reports on this case, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and that you have developed certain impressions, somewhat positive of defendant Kimberly Potter and very negative on what you've heard, read, or seen about Dante Wright. I guess my question is this. No matter what you've seen or heard in this case, would you be able and recognize that you do have opinions and listen to the evidence in the case and follow the instructions of law that I give you and base your decision solely on the evidence and the law as I give it to you?
I would do my best.
Okay. Can you tell me what difficulty you would have in doing that?
I've just read a lot of information about the what happened and what some of the other things that happened prior to the incident before I ever was notified about this summons. So I read the news and I follow a lot of what happens and what's going on.
Well, you're really well informed and have watched the news reports and read news reports on this. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, okay? I guess I'm not doing this very well, but I'm trying to determine whether or not, notwithstanding the opinions that you have, and the impressions that you have about what happened, you can just look at what's presented in court and base your decision on what's presented in court as far as the evidence goes. For example, you indicated that you knew of some of the alleged crimes that were committed by Mr. Wright. Now, if that isn't in evidence in the case, you'll be instructed that you can't consider that in determining whether or not the state has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay. I guess I need to have you say something more
Oh.
positive than that, if you can.
I'm just trying to be honest. I've read a lot of information, and I don't want to mislead anyone. So that's why I said, I mean, I'm here doing my civic duty, and I do it kind of for my kids to show that this is what you do. But I've also, like I've said, I've read a lot of information, and I'll do my best.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm trying to not make up excuses or why not to come to jury duty. And like I said, I'm trying to set an example for my kids. So,
Well, you set a good example for your kids just by showing up. All right. You also indicated that our community is a mess because of these protests and that you don't feel safe in the city of Minneapolis anymore. Is that going to affect your decision as to whether or not the state has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt?
no.
Okay. Now, you indicated your father-in-law is an attorney. Does he do criminal law?
He's a judge as well. He's retired now.
Oh, okay. Was
Yeah.
he a judge in Hennepin County?
No, in Michigan.
Okay,
Yeah. He was a state judge and then a federal judge.
all right.
And actually, I also forgot my cousin is a judge in Minnesota, and I forgot to put that in there. So,
And I take it that they both do criminal law.
she is more tax, and I don't think she's a judge now. I think she works at the U.
Okay. And your father-in-law, did you?
He did criminal. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a lot of contact with your father-in-law?
Oh yeah, he's coming to town next week. So yeah, when we were there Labor Day weekend, and we go there in the summer. That's my wife's from Michigan, so go back to visit.
And how long has he been on the bench?
Oh boy, probably 30 years.
Okay. Yeah, you stated that you've served on a jury in a criminal case in 1996 and 1997 in Hennepin here.
It was a civil case. If I put criminal, I misspoke. Civil.
Civil.
Yeah.
Now, there's a completely different burden of proof in a civil case.
Mm-hmm.
The burden of proof in a civil case is preponderance of the evidence, or more likely than not. And of course, the criminal burden of proof is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Can you forget everything you learned about the civil burden of proof and apply the criminal?
Yes.
Okay. In response to the question, the jury must decide the case solely on the evidence and not because of bias, passion, prejudice, or sympathy. I asked, would you be able to follow this principle? And you said you weren't sure.
Yes, I would.
You would. Okay, so you meant to say you would follow that
Yes.
principle. Okay. You coach youth hockey, and you indicated that it might be a hardship for you to serve because you coach youth hockey. Are you the coach, or do you?
Yes. Yeah. Assistant coach.
Okay. So there are other people that could coach these kids.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your honesty.
Okay.
All right. Counsel?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Number 5. I have some follow-up questions for you on behalf of Ms. Potter. Mrs. Potter, I should say. The bottom line here is that you indicate on the last page of your questionnaire that you believe your civic duty is to be a juror if called. Is that right?
Yes.
And that your primary goal here is to set a good example for your kids,
Yes.
among other things. And I assume to be a good citizen for everyone. Is that right?
Well, more for my kids.
I'm sorry?
My kids more, but yes.
I assume both your kids are the hockey players?
Correct.
I take it from your questionnaire that you have some negative feelings about the riots that occurred after this incident. Is that right?
Correct.
And you feel not some hostility, but some concern about how the riots were handled. Am I right about that?
Correct.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I'm a rule follower. I believe that I respect private property and that you shouldn't be out destroying other people's property that they've worked really hard to get. I follow the laws, I follow the rules, and what has been going on in this state is very frustrating. I feel like some people, the law applies different to one person than another.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that, if you would.
I just can't, the things I read about that happens and I don't see anything happening to people is very frustrating. I can't leave my car in my driveway with any valuables in it anymore because people are going through our neighborhoods and taking stuff from our cars.
Is it a part of your frustration that these people aren't being arrested?
I think they are, but I don't think they're being prosecuted or they get out on bail. Right. I feel like they're not afraid of the consequences, and I am. That's part of why I'm here today, because I respect the law, and I just know that I think I would be. I just respect the law, so that's why I'm here.
Then you'll be a good juror. It's not for you to say, I suppose, but you'll try the best you can. That's all we can expect of anyone, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
You had a positive, somewhat positive impression of Officer Potter, according to your questionnaire?
I appreciate what police officers do to protect our society. To what they do, it's a tough job. I work with them in my job. I work in road construction, and we have state patrols on our jobs, and they do a great job keeping our workers safe, keeping the job safe. They're great people that have a tough job.
So you've had positive experiences with all law enforcement officials, it sounds.
Correct.
And you indicate it's important for someone who's pulled over by a law enforcement official to follow orders and directions. Fair enough?
Correct.
You still feel that way?
Correct.
You'd have no trouble presuming Officer Potter innocent of the offenses that she's been charged with, right?
Yeah, correct. The way the way the court system's set up, correct.
And I take it you don't support the defunding movement, defunding the police departments. Is that correct?
Correct.
For the reasons you've stated.
Correct.
Anything else?
No, that's to me is the number one purpose of government is to protect and the justice system and follow our laws equally.
One of the interesting parts of your questionnaire is that you have pepper spray in your household.
Correct.
Tell us about that, would you?
It's just a precautionary thing with everything that's been happening.
Did you buy it recently?
Correct.
After the riots, or give us a time frame?
We also have guns too, but after seeing what's happens when you use a gun, the pepper spray seems like maybe a better first choice if someone does something to our house, comes into our home.
Do you have one can and other people in your family have the other cans, or just one?
No, we have them in our vehicles, in our house.
Can you believe
It's
in the second?
Yeah, it's too bad.
I'm sorry?
It's pretty sad that that's what we have to do now.
One of the things you were reluctant about for this case was to look at the photographs. Can you tell me more about that? Are you talking about the photographs of an autopsy or photographs of the scene, or what are you referring to there?
I just really don't want to see that.
Well,
It would be very disturbing to me. I don't want to see that or be part of that.
well, if you're picked for the jury, there are going to be a few photographs shown. I mean, that's kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
You can see those, though, can't you? I mean, if you're obligated to see it, you got to see it.
I don't want to.
Well, I don't think anyone wants to see autopsy pictures, frankly. But it is a part of a case like this, so can you look at them?
I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to look at pictures of a body that's gone. I mean, it's not pleasant. I mean, it's just something you have to do, though. Would you agree?
Correct.
Okay. Your spouse is in healthcare?
Correct.
What is she? What does she do?
Pharmaceutical sales.
Despite, I think Judge Chu talked to you about this, but despite your opinions about things, you certainly are able to do your civic duty here and be fair to everybody, aren't you? Yes.
Correct.
Can I pause for a second, Your Honor?
Yes.
We pass number 5, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, State, may proceed.
You're quick enough, not bring the equipment. Juror number 4, good morning.
Bye.
I'm sorry, 5, yeah, I'm losing count. I apologize, first of all, for impersonally referring to you by number only. It's just the way we're doing it in this case, so forgive me for that. I really appreciate you being as candid as you are. I think it's, I appreciate that one of the messages you're trying to send your children is the importance of being here for jury duty, but also being candid about it, right? And you've told us a lot of things, and that you really feel strongly about. And I mean, in your questions about Black Lives Matter, you called it a Marxist communist organization.
Correct.
Pretty strong opinion, right? I mean, what did you mean by that?
That's what they are. They are Marxist communists. That's their primary goal is to convert this country into that.
And I assume you don't want to be converted into that type of a country.
Correct.
And you think that this group is sort of leading that charge under the guise of Black Lives.
Correct.
And that's part of what's creating some of the problems that you've been telling us about, right? People not following the law, people looting and rioting, stealing, right?
Correct.
And it seems like sort of it's sort of an us versus them, right? Like they're trying to convert this country into something you don't want it to be.
Correct.
And and that causes you enough concern to arm yourself
Correct.
and to get pepper spray, because I wasn't quite sure what you had said about while you have had guns, you've also gotten pepper spray. Can you explain that to me, please?
Because if you use a gun, you're going to get in a lot of trouble, even though it was for self-defense. So if you can use pepper spray first.
And you talked about sort of the law applying differently to some people than others, right?
Correct.
And is this sort of a symptom of this problem that you're seeing, this sort of us versus them? That there's this group that the law isn't being applied to equally.
Correct.
You're a law follower, they're not.
Correct.
Okay. And that's, how much of a race issue is that for you?
Zero. It's some people can do things and they aren't charged with it, and other people they are, and it really depends what political views you have, in my opinion.
And does it, obviously Black Lives Matter by its very name, it is an organization that uses race, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And they're part of the problem here in creating this sort of us versus them
No,
situation.
I would disagree.
Why is that?
I think the law is applied differently to different people, and that's where the issue is.
Okay. And the one way it's applied differently is it doesn't apply sometimes, in your mind at least, fairly to people who commit crimes.
Correct.
And, number 5, one of the things I was, not everybody is right for every jury, right? One of the reasons we go through this process is to make sure that, we take people who just aren't right for this case and have them serve jury duty on some other case. Do you see what I mean?
Correct.
And, here, obviously, you have a young Black male victim, right? And you told us before, honestly, before you got the jury summons, understandably, you had read a lot about him. So you know the things that the media reports he's been alleged to have done, right?
Correct.
And, he's not on trial here for those things. You believe that he's gotten away with some things. He hasn't been held accountable for those things.
Correct.
Yeah. And it's sort of part of the problem. I think you mentioned in your questionnaire that can't believe he was out in the streets, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And, you have a situation where he allegedly wasn't cooperating with a police officer, right?
Correct.
And you think that's wrong. And that's part of why you have a negative view of him, right?
Can I comment more? Or?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
I think if he would have listened to the directions, he would still be with us.
And that's an opinion that you hold pretty firmly because of all that you learned about the case before.
That's what I teach my kids. That's what I do myself when I've been pulled over. I follow the directions.
Yeah. I'm not criticizing you for having gained information, and
I got it all way before I was summoned.
I completely understand that.
So I have not read new things since because I'm literally a square and follow the rules, but I've read a lot before I got my summons.
You've had jury duty once before. It was a civil case, right?
Correct.
Do you remember let me just ask you this. As the judge said, the two burdens of proof are quite a bit different.
Correct. It was a lot different experience than this.
And, the judge asked you, can you put that aside, put all that you've learned and read and the opinions that you have aside, and you said you would do your best.
Correct.
And we appreciate that. We really do. How do you think, I guess what I'm getting at is we do want your kids to appreciate, and please don't take offense that I'm including your children. I think it's a very valid point that you raised. But isn't it also a worthwhile issue for your kids, being honest here? You're under oath. You want to follow the oath that the court put you under, right? And you said that you would do your best. How do you know now that you would be able to do that? How do you know now that after sitting through weeks of trial, you would be able to put that aside? Or are you telling the judge you just don't know right now?
Yeah, that would be correct.
You indicated you respect the law, and that's why you're here. Again, appreciate that. We as lawyers really do appreciate it when people respond to jury duty. It's a critical part of this system, right, to function properly. Part of that is having jurors we know can be fair and impartial. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is you're not sure you can do that in this case.
I do my best.
But you would agree that you've made some impressions based on what you've read about Mr. Wright that you still hold today. They're going to be very difficult to get out of your head.
Correct.
Yeah, may we address the court again, please?
Yes. Thank you for your candor. You're going to be excused from this panel.
Okay.
You don't have to go back upstairs, all right? So,
Or you mean back downstairs or?
yeah, you don't have to go back downstairs. So you're done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Let's see, we should probably take a break. All right, council, we're taking our morning break. It'll be 20 minutes, so we'll start again at 10 after 11. Thank you, Deputy. Okay, hello, juror number 6. Yes, you can sit right there. And would you please remove your mask?
Okay.
Okay, how are you doing today?
Fine.
Okay, good. All right. I do have a couple follow-up questions on your questionnaire.
Okay.
Okay. You indicated that you have a very negative impression of Kimberly Potter and also a very negative general impression of Dante Wright. You didn't elaborate on why you had a very
I
negative
don't know how I
opinion.
answered that way. I guess I didn't want to. Not necessarily negative, I guess.
Good fine.
I answered that, but going back, I didn't elaborate on it. I wanted to get my questionnaire back, but I guess I was feeling more. There's maybe evidence on both sides that you could maybe argue about, if it was, I don't know. I would say it's equal.
Well, one of the things that we want jurors to do is to keep an open mind
Right.
until they've heard all the evidence and not be leaning one way or the other on whether the state. And that would be notwithstanding Mr. Ryder.
No, and I really don't. I mean,
Okay.
I guess I maybe answered it the same for both because I really don't.
Gotcha. Are you willing to serve on this jury? I'd like you to elaborate on your answer to the question, do you believe that the jury system in this country is a fair system? Why or why not?
I think that not always. You hear about cases where the person's found guilty and later on you had more evidence comes up, or I don't know. I've never served on a jury before, so.
Okay. Do you believe that our criminal justice system works?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. You indicated in your answer, not always, it was equity issues. Could you explain that answer?
And what was the question?
Do you believe our criminal justice system works? Why or why not? Not always equity issues. I think I know what you mean because you're telling me what you mean.
I think sometimes the jury may not be real balanced, I guess is maybe what I would say. Just in terms of background or race or
It may not be as diverse.
Right.
Now, you indicated that you would find it difficult for you to evaluate graphic photographs or video. To look at those types of photographs. But if you were chosen to be a juror in this case, would you be able to do it?
I could,
Okay.
right.
But if it was your duty, you
Any
would.
image that you see stays with you, so. Okay, sorry. Photos or video, that image stays with you. And when it's something like somebody being killed, that's pretty graphic, and I wouldn't choose to if I didn't have to, but I could.
To the question, is there anything else I and the attorney should know about you in relation to serving on this jury? You said my concern is that I will be overcome with emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I've been treated for depression and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter passed away. I'm so sorry about that. Difficult time of the year. First of all, I'm very sorry. For the
And
loss of your daughter.
she passed away on New Year's Day, coming up on 2 years.
Okay.
So our family is still grieving, but
Right. My question is whether or not you're going to be so upset about that to the extent that you'd be unable to concentrate on what's going on in court.
I don't think that would be a problem to concentrate. I just don't know if it's typical for jurors to get emotional about my own personal. But that's kind of where my mind is, and if
It's understandable, for sure. It's understandable to be upset and to still be upset about your daughter's death.
Mhm.
My concern here is to try to determine whether or not, given your emotional state and the fact that it's 2 years from the date this happened, that you would be so consumed with emotion that you wouldn't be able to pay attention to the evidence as it came in.
Well, I mean, I go through day to day, and am able to manage taking care of myself. I live alone, taking care of various things, even though that's kind of in the background. But I guess if I can do that, I feel like I could hold it together.
And life goes on. Okay. Do you think you could be fair and impartial to both sides in this?
I really
case?
do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
I'm a retired teacher, and one of my students told me one time that I'm strict fair.
Okay. Those are two good things. All right, Mr. Ng.
Good morning.
Morning.
I have a few follow-up questions for you on behalf of Officer Potter.
Okay.
And then the state will follow me, and then you'll be done.
All right.
Okay. In the first part of your questionnaire, you have a long narrative of what the case was about. Do you recall this?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicate remembering something about Officer Potter shouting taser, taser, taser.
Yeah. And shout. Yeah.
Did you get that from the tape or the video that you saw, or did you get that from reading?
I don't know if it was like TV news. I'm not sure. Or it could have been something I heard on, NPR or something. I don't remember where I heard it.
Did those 3 words have an impact on you when you wrote them down
really,
again?
when I first heard about this, my reaction was, how could this happen? And that's kind of where I'm still at, and this trial maybe will clarify some of those things.
Well, let me tell you that if you're selected,
Yes.
Officer Potter will testify
Mhm.
and tell you
Mhm.
what
Right.
she remembered
Right.
happened.
Yes.
So you will know,
Mhm.
not just from the video, but from the officers at the scene
Mhm.
and Officer Potter herself,
Mhm.
what was occurring.
Yes.
I take it you'd be quite interested in hearing what she had to say,
Yes.
and you would be willing to wait for her.
Yes.
The state goes first; they have the burden, of course. We go second,
Mhm.
just the nature of the organization of a trial.
Mhm.
But we have something to say here too.
Right.
You'll wait for her.
Mhm.
You also indicated in your narrative that Mr. Wright had been involved in a shooting that left the victim mentally and physically disabled.
Yeah, I heard that someplace too. But I understand, given that, I understand that he is not on trial, and that can't be even talked about, can it? Like in a trial?
Well,
like
it's
this?
up to the judge on what is evidence and what isn't
Okay.
evidence. You're bound to listen just to the evidence that
Right,
is presented.
right.
You're good to go with that idea.
Yeah, I understand that, he is not on trial here. That is not what this is about.
But you're willing to evaluate his conduct and what he was doing that day as well.
I guess. I mean, that's a piece of it,
This happened in 12 seconds, basically.
Right.
And it's everybody's perception matters, and what everybody did mattered. You'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Fair enough? Yeah.
Yes.
Our concern is with your last sentence. According to sources, Potter had been training and hadn't been performing active duty assignments. What did you mean by that?
That's just something else that I heard in the news, that she hadn't been in that, and maybe that's not accurate. I don't know.
Have you heard of the phrase a field training officer, FTO? Do you know that phrase?
I
at all?
don't know.
Well, the next question I have is the one that Judge Chu asked you about, that you had a very negative impression of her. And of course, we're concerned about that because we represent Officer Potter. And
I can't explain
you
now.
got to help me with this a little bit.
I don't know if it was just more of a reaction to the incident that I felt negatively about that. I don't know what kind of mindset I had when I answered that way, because I did it for both the victim and so.
You said that she acted impassively. I don't think it's impassively. It's do you remember the word you used?
Could you read what it
Impulsively?
says? Impulsively? Yeah.
I think it's
maybe that's
impulsive.
it.
It's hard to read.
Right.
Okay. Do I have that word? I think that's right, isn't it?
Right.
Okay. And why did you say that?
Well, because I just think in the heat of an exchange like that that she just automatically reached. Here's what I was thinking is that if a person is right-handed, would you think that, in the heat of things, she would just naturally use her right hand and not have time to really process that it's, maybe not the weapon that she meant?
Yeah. And you would agree that the situation was frenetic and
Mm-hmm.
quick.
Mm-hmm.
You had made decisions. Everyone had to make decisions quite quickly.
Right.
And later in the same page, you say you still didn't understand how something like this could have happened.
Yeah,
Okay, and is that
Yeah.
kind of where you are?
I am. Yeah.
And if you realize the nature of the trial is our attempt to explain
Exactly.
why this happened,
Mm-hmm.
and you're again willing to listen to us
Right.
because we will present testimony
Mm-hmm.
as to the why.
Yes.
I just had a couple more. There was this one chart on page 7 where you had to strongly agree and strongly disagree. Do you remember this one?
I don't know.
Well, let me ask you where you check marked a couple things for you. One of the questions was, because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second guess decisions they make while on duty. And you say you strongly disagree.
Well, I think read the question again. What was
Yeah.
it?
Because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second guess decisions they make while on duty.
Well, I do disagree with that because if they're trained, then, they would, a lot of police incidents happen and you wonder why they do that. Is it their training?
So you're willing to second guess, but you're also willing to listen to the training that they receive
Right.
and how a confusion could happen.
Yes.
And you say somewhat agree.
Yes.
Talk to me about that one.
I guess that depending on, our people profile, are they being fair when they detain you for some? I don't know. I just think that they are supposed to.
And you said also that Black people and other minorities do not receive equal treatment to whites in the criminal justice system, and you still feel that way, of course.
I do.
Do you have any prejudice, though, because Officer Potter's white in this
No.
case, and Mr. Wright was Black, and he was arrested on a warrant? Do you have any prejudgment in that respect?
No.
Firearms.
Mm-hmm.
You said that there's a need for restricting the use of firearms to ex-convicts and mentally ill. Tell us a little bit more about that one.
I am just really anti-gun, I guess you would say. I think there's so many people know what you're up against, especially if you're in law enforcement. I've shot a gun, I think one time about 50 years ago, but I've never owned a gun or hunted or anything. So
I take it you believe in the permitting process, that
I do, but I think that laws need to be looked at as far as, what should be legally sold as a firearm. Not the automatic or semi-automatic guns don't really need that for protection or hunting. So
How about handguns? How do you feel about
handguns,
those?
I have kind of negative view about that too.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I just, no, I don't like handguns either.
But you do believe someone should have a permit to have one?
Well, I believe that in certain, I mean, if you work in maybe a high crime or live in a high crime area, I can understand that. Or, in some ways, I can see why you would want that handgun. But most of the time, I don't see the point of it. I think they're cause more death and injury than if they didn't. So.
You have 3 kids.
I do,
I'm sorry, the one daughter passed. Is that-
right.
okay.
I have 4.
4.
So I
So
have-
what do they do? If you could tell me.
My oldest daughter works for Merck in Boston, Merck Pharmaceuticals. She has a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology. My third daughter is an engineer,
Is what? I'm sorry.
an electrical engineer, and my youngest daughter works for Allianz. So they're all math science kids.
Okay. A couple more questions. I said that a few minutes ago, but I'm almost done. You said, no, I believe role and social status contribute to the unfairness of the criminal justice or the jury system.
I do.
Okay. In this case, though, we're going to be fighting for Officer Potter.
Of course.
And you realize our role in doing that
Hmm.
and representing her and being her voice.
Yes.
And there's nothing unfair to her in litigating the case and pleading not guilty, is there?
Mhm.
And she has a right to be here,
Of course. Yep.
and you'll listen to what we have to say,
Hmm.
regardless of social status and race.
Right.
A couple more questions then, and I do mean it this time. The last question of the questionnaire was, do you want to be a juror in the case? You say yes, and you want to fulfill your civic duty, which I think
Mhm.
we understand. You have an interest in true crime.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I just watch a lot of true crime. Any true crime thing you see on cable, cold case files, investigation ID. I watch all those shows. It's very interesting.
And of course, this is the real deal here.
Yes, I know.
It's a lot different. I realize this is a difficult time of year for you, and this is a death case, of course, and and I don't want to ask any questions about your daughter's passing, but it's not involved in anything like this case, I assume.
No, she died of breast cancer.
I'm sorry I asked, but I have to ask the question.
Yeah.
May I have a moment?
Yes.
We pass this, juror. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything? Can I go?
You are,
Okay.
okay. You will be a juror on this case. Okay. So we're gonna start on December 8th.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about the state. The state gets to ask you questions too.
Okay.
Excuse me, I forgot about you, Mr. Frank. Go ahead.
Happens all the time. Yeah. It doesn't. And juror number 6, I apologize for calling you by number. It's just the way we're doing it in this case, so please forgive us for that. And I'm not going to tell you, I just a couple of questions,
Okay.
because I know you won't believe it if I say so.
Okay.
But of course, I come third now, so I probably don't have as many questions as you do, as the others have already asked many of them. Can you tell me a little bit about, hold on just a second. You're currently retired, correct?
Yes.
Congratulations. Tell me what you did before you retired.
I was a special ed teacher in the Osseo, Maple Grove, Brooklyn Park area schools.
How old were your students?
I actually had been in elementary and high school. My last 5 years was at the high school.
And so how long did you do that?
I started my teaching career when I was 50. So I taught that, and then I also taught part-time English language to immigrants.
Okay. When did you do that before?
I did that at the
50?
same time, actually. I did that 2 nights a week in addition to my teaching job.
Okay. Did you like doing that?
I did very much. Mhm.
I think starting teaching at 50 would be a challenge, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Even more so now, I think.
Yeah. And how's retirement? Are you enjoying it?
Well, not what I expected. Like I said, we've had some family, grieving, but then that came right as COVID. So I'd planned to travel, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, I guess.
And a tough couple of years.
Yes.
And I, like everybody else, deep condolences on your daughter's loss. All of us that work in this field understand somewhat about what anniversaries mean and how significant they can actually be. So we don't want to diminish that in any way, but I think you've probably already been asked, and it sounds like you feel that you can, commit to this if you were selected as a juror, knowing that anniversary is coming up, and grieving really always goes on, doesn't it? And Mr. Eng mentioned that you had some questions about how could this happen, and he indicated to you that Ms. Potter's going to tell you what she remembers about it. Now, if she does that, are you going to just simply believe what she said, or are you going to evaluate her testimony like any other witness?
I would evaluate it, I think, like any other witness.
And do you understand that obviously she's not going to be the only witness in this case?
Right.
And Mr. Eng told you that, for instance, this all happened in 12 seconds. And I guess because you've been a teacher, you're probably going to be okay with me telling you this, but you have to answer with yes or no.
Okay.
Because the court reporter has to take everything down. It's one of those things that, it's a hard habit to break.
Yeah.
But we just have to make sure that the words show up in the transcript later. So if I interrupt you and tell you that, that's simply why. But Mr. Eng said, this all happened in 12 seconds. You understand that may be one position on this?
I think that's a factor for sure. I really feel for any law enforcement because things can happen just so quickly.
And do you understand that if there's evidence in this case that really the basis for the crime extends well beyond Mr. Ang's 12 seconds? Do you understand that may happen?
Say that again?
That the circumstances involved in this case go well beyond those 12 seconds,
Okay, like the before and after.
certainly before.
Mhm.
One of the things you mentioned earlier is training.
Mhm.
Yes? You have to say yes or no.
Yes,
Okay. And you're going to have testimony in this case about training. And that's going to be part of the evidence you'll hear as well.
Mhm.
Yes?
yes,
And are you going to evaluate that evidence as part of all the evidence in the case?
yes.
And you talked about, in response to some of Mr. Ang's questions, having to make decisions quickly.
Mhm. Yes,
And if there's evidence about officers being trained to make decisions in those circumstances
yes,
over decades, you'll evaluate that evidence as well.
yes.
And that making those decisions have to be made in accordance with the law. You'll hear evidence about that.
Yes,
You'll evaluate all of that evidence as well.
yes.
You've been asked a couple times about the very negative and very negative.
Yeah,
And
yes, yes.
I think I'm getting to an understanding of that. Is it fair to say that what you're telling us is it's not really personal?
No,
It's just
no
somebody's dead.
thing.
And obviously you have some sympathy for a young man who was killed
Of course.
and an officer who made those
Yes,
actions.
yes.
And as you sit here today, can you tell the court that you can set aside in court? You indicated that you had gained some information about Mr. Wright's past before this occurred.
Yes,
And you indicated that that can't be talked about, and Mr. Ang was absolutely right.
mhm,
We don't tell you what the law is. The
right.
judge will
Yes.
tell you what the law is. But if you hear no evidence about that in this case, you understand that you have to set aside any of that prior knowledge.
Of course, I know that the victim is not on trial.
And in fact, the things you've heard about have never been proved that you know of.
Exactly, and you can only get so much information wherever you look,
I assume as a teacher
Mhm.
and a parent,
Yes,
you've had two people tell you different versions of what happened.
yes,
And you have to sometimes make decisions based on what you're told.
I think you have to do your fact checking, you have to check your facts.
And when you do that, do you want to take into consideration everything that you can about what actually happened?
Yes,
Like I said, sometimes my questions have already been asked, so I'm trying not to duplicate.
mhm,
forgive me for not knowing this, but you have family members in the military. Had.
I have my brother was in the Marines. He went to Vietnam.
And your father was in the Army, maybe?
My father was in the Army.
What do you, how do you feel about their service?
My dad was stateside during World War II, so I don't really know a lot about that. My brother was wounded in Vietnam. I think he had a real hard time adjusting when he got back.
Yeah, so many did. Did they, has that improved at all?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. It's tough. Did they, well, I suspect your brother not so much, have a favorable, did they like being in the military? Was that an important part of their lives?
Did my brother like being in the military?
Either one.
You know what? He was very young. I mean, he left before high school graduation, and he was only there for, I think, 2 years. And we haven't really talked a lot about it.
Okay. So, did your father talk much about his military experience?
No, I think he taught insurance or something. He had very not so military kind of a job when he was in the Army.
Yeah. So, other than your brother's ongoing memories of it, were either of them really involved in the military, or was it just short time in and out?
I think it was short time in and out.
If you can excuse me just for a moment, Your Honor, may I?
Yes.
Forgive me. Not to kind of go back to, well, this is going to be kind of a similar question.
Okay.
There are two questions in the questionnaire, one about Black Lives Matter and one
Yes.
about Blue Lives Matter.
Yes.
And you checked somewhat favorable for both.
Right. Yes.
Just describe for us what you mean.
Well, I mean, the peaceful demonstrations I thought were fine, but there was also a lot of, violence during these protests where people were even, killed. So I guess that's kind of what I was thinking.
Okay. And saying the same thing about Blue Lives Matter. Do you remember?
Yeah. Blue Lives Matter. Yes, but I guess when you see certain times when they maybe don't use such good judgment and someone gets hurt, I think they matter, but everybody matters, right?
And nothing about that would not allow you to look critically at the conduct of a police officer in this situation if you were selected as a juror.
Yes, yeah,
You could do that.
yes.
And, this issue about, obviously, we've gone through a lot of demonstrations and protests and riots over the last couple of years. Were you personally affected?
No.
What did you think about those things going on?
I think that the people who were really, really had a passion for, Black Lives Matter and were there to, protest some of these things, I absolutely support that. But it's just that some of the instigators to that violence kind of got intermingled with them. And so.
Yeah. So do you think, there's a legitimate purpose for some of this, right?
Mhm.
Demonstrations and
Right.
can good things come of that?
Yes.
But then, of course, we've also seen some of the bad side, right?
Yes.
There had been some similar activity, I guess you could say, after Mr. Wright's death in Brooklyn Center.
Yes.
Anything about that sticks in your mind to this day?
No.
Would you be able to set all of that aside, decide this case based on the evidence and not kind of all that other stuff going on outside?
Yes.
And that's not evidence of what
Right.
happened.
Has nothing really to do with this particular.
Thank you, Juror 6. Your Honor, we would pass the juror for cause.
Okay. You will be on this jury. Okay. You'll be called. As I indicated before, we expect to start December 8th at 9:00.
Yes.
But you'll receive a phone call confirming where you are to report and the exact time.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So have a wonderful rest of the day.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, hello, juror number 7.
Hi.
Please have a seat. And would you please remove your mask?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, just a couple of follow-up questions. Thank you for filling out the questionnaire. All right, you were asked a number of questions about what you knew about the case or what you recall seeing in the media. And you were asked also what your general impression of defendant Potter was, and you indicated somewhat negative. Can you explain why you feel that way?
So I know I definitely saw the video a few times, especially initially. And with the flurry of excitement, there was a lot of things like, just everyone throwing out their opinions, whether on the internet or social situations.
Robert, could you speak into the mic?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, please. I guess maybe I should start right away. I don't want to do myself a disservice here. I work overnights and I have not slept yet. So I'm almost at my 24 hours awake. So just a heads up, if I seem a little despondent or weird, that is why. I do feel good energy wise, but just like cognitively, I feel like I'm slipping a bit right now. But in regards to the question here, so I did see the video initially a few times, like when it was released. There was a flurry of excitement surrounding it, like a lot of people throwing out their opinions on it. You know, looking at the video, like I have not seen it in a long time, and it did seem like it was kind of clear what happened, but also at the time when I was filling out that questionnaire, I didn't really know what the charges would be or what we would be looking at. I don't want to like pat myself too much on the back here, but I do feel like I am somebody that is open to new information and willing to change any opinions that I might have upon initial reaction. And so when I was answering that questionnaire, I feel like I was just sharing my initial reaction to it. And as of like right now, the video is not fresh in my head. You know, I'm open to new information and seeing things from a new light. So I would not say that I do have a negative opinion on it per se. I just like, you know, the video does like show a sequence of events for sure. But I do know that there's nuances and gray areas to situations, and I'm not going to throw those out the window and discredit it just because of, I don't know, initial excitement around a video. So.
Okay. Well, what we need to have you do here is, notwithstanding what initial reactions you had and initial opinions you formed regarding this case, that you would concentrate on the evidence that is in the form of testimony of the witnesses and any exhibits that are admitted in evidence, and base your decision solely on that. Can you do that?
Yes, I do believe so. Yeah, confidently I can say that. I really like what you said to us when we were sitting over there about that, about how we're not coming necessarily to a judgment of like what the outcome should be. We're literally just looking at the facts and seeing if they're valuable and viable. So,
Okay, thank you. By the way, what job do you have?
So I'm an operations manager at Target. So I got like a team of about 110 people that I manage. And I work overnights, so I do 4 o'clock to 7 a.m., just Saturday, Sunday through Monday. So that's today, Tuesday is usually my zombie Tuesday where I catch up on sleep. So
Okay.
yeah.
Now, of course, if you're chosen as a juror in this case, we would be doing the trial during the day. Are you able to take time off to sit as a juror here?
Yes, I have already talked to HR just a little bit just to see what my options are. And they do like have leave options available for jury duty specifically. And my bosses are very in tune and attuned to me and like my own like needs and stuff. So they'll be pretty accommodating.
Okay. So you won't have to work overnight if you're chosen as a juror.
It sounds like I should be fine. Like I know my mentor at that job, he was called for jury duty and they just didn't have him work for that entire period. So I'm anticipating that would be the same situation for myself if that's what happens. So.
You stated that your cousin is a former police officer and her husband is a current police officer. Where are they police officers?
So I know they both, or at least my cousin was in Douglas County. And then she eventually became a DNR agent. And I believe that is what she's currently doing right now. Her husband, I want to say Carver County. I could be wrong. I'm not too sure. I'm not very close with him. I don't know. Should I disclose his name?
No.
Okay. Oh, that's right. No names. Yeah. So yeah, we're just cousins. Yeah.
In the introductory portion of the trial, when I brought you all in and asked you general questions, are you going to be, even though you have relatives that are in law enforcement, are you going to be able to judge their credibility just like you would any other witness?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
People are just people.
You stated that your friend was mugged while, I can't read your writing there.
Oh yeah, I do not have good handwriting.
Okay.
Yeah, I do not remember every question.
Walking, I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
walking.
walking. Yeah. So I know my friend was mugged walking home. I'm not sure what the question was actually exactly. I know he didn't really receive much help in that situation, but I also do understand that a lot of that, like there isn't much help that can be done, and
Okay.
then we're just one-off mugging. So
All right, so when did this happen and were the police called?
ooh, I want to say this was like 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and I'd have to ask him, but I'm pretty sure he did call the cops, and they just took some information, and that was like kind of the end of it. So
Okay, they never found the culprit?
no, I do not believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said that you were somewhat unsatisfied with how the police responded.
Yeah,
What more do you think they should have done?
well, like thinking about it now, like I don't know if there is more that they could have done, just with like the limited nature of details that my friend could have even provided, like, and I feel like that's not something I should really be speaking of, or probably should have included in the questionnaire because I'm not the individual involved. I don't know if the police officers pulled security cameras or anything like that. So I probably shouldn't have even included that in the questionnaire.
Okay.
So
Is there anything about that incident that's going to make you feel like you should not sit as a juror in this case?
no,
All right. And you're not going to hold that against any police officers that testify, am I correct?
no. Again, I'm not quite sure what that question is or was, but like I've definitely had situations where the police force was very accommodating and very helpful. So like,
Okay. You've had training or experience handling a taser. What type of training and experience have you had?
So I went through firearm safety, and then I did previously briefly own a taser, but not quite a taser, just like a little stun gun. So my training was very minimal. Probably would have been about 12 to 14 years old. So
Okay.
Yeah.
And you don't know anybody that's ever been shocked or stunned by a taser?
no.
Okay. So you had it when you were 14?
Oh yeah, I think I was like 14 around the time I did it. Yeah.
Do you presently own a taser?
No.
Okay.
No.
Are you willing to serve as a juror on this case?
Yes. Yeah.
There is a question here that you can't read, watch, or listen to news accounts of the trial. You're not to talk to anybody about the case. You're not to post anything on social media or elsewhere. And the question is, would you find it difficult to follow these instructions for any reason? And the response that you had on the questionnaire was, no, I don't believe so. Can you tell me that you won't do it?
Yes, I will not do it. My only really social media that I use will be very easy for me to just delete off my phone, and then
Okay.
there's not gonna be any issues with that.
All right. Thank you.
I understand how serious this is.
In response to one question that states, is there any other reason that you could not be a fair and impartial juror in the case? You said that I am slightly distrustful of cops. I believe they have an incredibly hard job, but I believe they should be held to the highest standard of scrutiny. Now, there is probably going to be testimony concerning what a reasonable police officer would do under the circumstances. Can you apply those standards and not any higher standard that you believe that cops should be held to?
Yes, and I can see how my language there is a little, yeah, but yes.
Okay.
I think the main point I was trying to get at there is that like people are people, and I don't think that a badge should like exclude you from consequences to actions potentially. Yeah, just like the other side of that coin is also like, you know, like shouldn't trust somebody just because there's a badge there either, you know. So.
All right, thanks. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Rasmussen.
Good afternoon.
I'm Earl Gray. I'm a lawyer for Kim Potter, and that's Paul Lang. We were introduced by the court early on. I'm going to ask you a few questions about your questionnaire, not many.
Yeah.
And our goal is to find a fair and impartial juror for our client, Ms. Potter. One of the questions I have is, since you answered this questionnaire a couple months ago, was it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And since that time, is there any new information you would have included in this questionnaire that you can think of?
When I filled out that questionnaire, I was definitely rushing. I filled it out like the day before it was supposed to get sent out. So anything I would have done differently would have just taken a little more time with it. But no new information per se. I have not looked up the case or looked up any more details or been discussing it with anyone. So I haven't, if anything, I've unlearned information just by like, you know, not seeing the video and it not being fresh in my mind anymore. So.
Okay. Besides this questionnaire and the questions that were asked by the court, is there any other information that we didn't include in the questionnaire that you would think would be pertinent to us?
I felt like the questionnaire was pretty in depth. I felt like it covered a lot of topics. I did not finish it thinking, oh, is that it? Or anything like that. So no.
Okay. One of the questions on page 13, and I think the judge has already asked you about this a little bit. Under our system of justice, the jury must decide the case solely on the evidence produced in court and the law that the judge instructs. Now, what that means, of course, is that the multiple times that you watch this video, they have to be set aside.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of a legal fiction because it's extremely difficult to do. Would you attempt to do that and set that aside?
Yes, definitely.
And then not because of bias, passion, prejudice, or sympathy. And with that regard, you answer, I would try my very best at least. Would you involve your bias or passion or prejudice or sympathy in your decision making in this case?
No, I know bias is a real thing that everyone holds, and I will actively do my best to not like lean into that at all. And I know like the judge's words to us when we were sitting over there, like really help clarify like what my responsibilities as a juror would be, which is not something I was super clear of filling out that questionnaire. So.
Okay. And with respect to the 15-hour overnights,
Mm-hmm.
You answered that to the court. I wasn't quite clear. Is it going to happen now if you're selected on this jury and you're called back on the 8th that they will change, Target Corporation will change a work schedule for you so you don't have to work a 15-hour night and come in here on a Tuesday without sleep?
My job has been very accommodating. I
That
believe
doesn't
that,
answer the question.
yeah, I believe they will put me on an actual leave where I will not be working during this period. If I am working, I would just be working Saturday and maybe a half day on Sunday. So I'm still going home and getting sleep.
Okay, and so you wouldn't be working a full week then, correct?
No. Yeah, and I still need to connect and with HR and like see exactly how that looks like. But I know they do have great leave programs and stuff, and they do have one specifically for jury duty.
Are you going to be paid for the time you're on leave?
From my understanding, yeah, 70% of my salary. So.
Were you involved at all, and I've seen this on the news, with respect to Target and some other companies were sort of attacked by 10, 15 people to steal items out of the store? Did you have any involvement in that?
No, I work at a distribution center, or the distribution center, so no. Yeah.
The distribution center, did you have to send some more product out to these Target stores that were hit?
Well, there was a Target store or two that were like kind of shut down completely, so we were not sending product there. So we did notice that. Yeah.
Hey, I'll just come in onto the stream real quick to announce that the stream on Twitch and YouTube will be ending in about 15 minutes, but you can continue watching on the Georgia Fort Facebook page or the Benjamin Dixon Facebook page. But we'll be streaming here still for about another 15 minutes.
I would hope the same for myself. So.
And with respect to a taser, you had some kind of a stun gun that was a taser?
Yeah. Again, I did that firearm safety class when I was 12 to 14. I realistically do not know much about guns or tasers. What I had was, I believe it would be technically a stun gun, not a taser. Just the one with like the two prongs that zap. It doesn't shoot a projectile or anything like that. So.
And you were 14?
I think I was 14. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember the circumstances under which you purchased it?
Sorry. So, yeah, I should clarify that. So I went through the firearm safety around 12 to 14. I owned the taser about 4 or 5 years ago. I spent the majority of my 20s playing in a touring rock band, and with that, we were living on the road in our van. So we just had that for protection. And actually, when we toured Canada, they actually confiscated it, and I just never bought a new one. So we never had use for it. So
Tell us a little bit about riding with the rock band.
It was absolutely great. Like I said, I spent my whole 20s doing that. It was a great eye-opening experience. And I feel like as a result, like my worldview has like shifted and grown through that experience. So I'm very thankful for it. Not thankful for COVID and shutting that down. But, you know, with that being shut down, like I've been able to focus on my work at Target. So, but yeah, being in a rock band was great. Loved it. And I guess in relation to how it pertains to this case, we never had any issues with like police officers. Any run-ins we had, they were extremely helpful and supportive. So,
what did you specifically do traveling with this rock band?
So I play bass guitar, and then I also handled the merch. So I designed everything, and I handled the visual representation of the band. So. And
did you travel the whole United States?
Yeah, there's a few states that we haven't hit, but yeah, we've done the majority of the United States and a lot of Canada, and we had intentions to do Japan and England right before COVID hit. So, but.
And why did you stop doing that? Was it?
Oh, just COVID, but also like I'm knocking the door. I'm 30 or 29 right now, and you know, like all 4 of us now live in different cities and or states. So it's kind of like, I wouldn't say the natural conclusion, but it's transitioned from this is my focus in life to this is a hobby. So there's, time. Yeah.
Do you still play in a rock band at all?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And when do you do that?
Play in a rock band, yeah. Like we send tracks back and forth as we're writing for our next record. But one of us is in Missouri, one of us is Virginia, one's in Duluth, and I'm here in the Twin Cities. So physically getting together and playing, no. But I'm still technically playing in the band, yeah. So I mean, every day I'm playing in my room and writing parts. But
okay, so you don't on a Friday night or a Saturday night?
No. We just got offered to do a tour in February, but I don't feel comfortable. I'm very sensitive about COVID, so.
And it was, what kind of a band was it? A rock and roll band?
Yeah, alternative rock, grunge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Loud. Yeah.
getting to the question about, is there any reason that you could not be a fair and impartial juror in this case? Please explain. And you answered, and I realized it was hurried because you had waited to fill this out till the last minute. But you did put down back then that you're slightly distrustful of cops. What happened in your 29 years that caused you to be distrustful of cops, if anything, or what you read, or maybe playing a guitar, you saw something that.
Right. A lot of it is just like different like court cases and stuff, or just different situations. Obviously, it's pretty easy for people to compile like video evidence of like police brutality and stuff, and like we had a very emotional year in Minneapolis the last couple of years, yeah, I don't know. Like I am always worried about my bias getting in the way of like any interaction with somebody, and I try really hard to not try to judge a book, person, or situation by its cover. And that's something I've been working on with the cop thing. Like, I'm being honest, like there is a somewhat of a distrust there, but I do recognize that it's a very hard job. And it's not something that I could do myself. And I do see the value of the police force, and like, it feels childish to say that there's a distrust there, because I do know if I need help, I'm reaching out and asking for that help. So, and that there's trust in there that I'm going to receive that help. So.
Could you set that aside? Because I'm sure you've had a long time to think about this, but could you set that distrust aside and sitting on this jury?
Yes, I believe people are people regardless of your occupation.
Not only setting it aside, but the law is that my client, and Paul's client, Kim Potter, she's presumed innocent of each and every element of the two crimes she's charged of. Can you presume her innocent?
Yes, and I think that is 100% how we should handle things in this country and the court system. Yeah. And I think there's even a question in there about like my thoughts in general about the court system. And just to throw like kind of a generic quote out there, I think it's Winston Churchill, just like, democracy might be a terrible form of government, but it's the best thing we have. And I feel like that kind of loosely extends into this. Like, I don't think we have a perfect system, but I do think we might have the best that we have thought of yet. So, like, especially this trial by jury and by your peers.
The narrative you wrote on page 3, which would be the what you remember you've seen about this, and I won't ask this again, but you've got to block that out and just rely on what you hear from this case, and you'll probably see videos in this case also. Be able to do that?
Yes, yes. Luckily, I have an advantage where I do not have a great memory as well.
Okay.
But regardless of all the things I do remember, yes, I would be entering this with fresh eyes and open to new information, new nuances, and gray areas that might like be talked about. So.
There's another question I have. You testified that you managed over 100 individuals at Target. Is that right?
Yeah.
And would you be willing to, when you get into the jury room in this case and you discuss the evidence and the law, would you be willing to listen to everybody else and not try and become the leader and have your own ideas and nobody else's?
Yes, definitely. I would say I'm not like an egotistical leader like that. I'm definitely a people-focused leader. I care a lot about nurturing success and nurturing growth. And a big part of that is listening to what people have to say, listening to their needs. Yeah. I don't steamroll anything if I can help it. So.
The last question is, what's the name of your band?
So we're called Weathered. So Weathered with an ED at the end. We're signed to Face Down Records, so it should be an easy Google search. We're still very small, but it's worth it. I'm so biased, but we're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Frank?
Oh, I'm done.
No.
Oh, okay.
Just stay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Juror 7. I apologize for calling you by a number rather than name, but there's a reason we're doing that in this case. I come third, right? So I have a lot of my questions have been asked, and you've been very forthcoming. We really appreciate that. Thank you for being here. Probably just a few follow-up questions. You indicated you're very sensitive about COVID. Very, very wise to be so. I can tell you the court has gone to great lengths to be sensitive about that as well.
I'm appreciating it. Yes.
Yeah. Is the accommodations the court have set up here, the courts have set up here, okay with you? Is it causing you any concerns?
Yeah, I did not enjoy my elevator ride, but aside from that, yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was looking around for some stairs, and I was like, well, that's a lot of floors.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they will try to, the sheriff's department will try to be very thoughtful about that, I'm sure, as the process goes on.
Yeah.
You indicated something I think is very interesting, that you're very aware of biases. All people have them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to say yes or no.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's a court reporter taking things down.
Yeah,
So
my apologies.
no, it's a hard habit to break. So we're very tolerant of it. But if I say that, that's why. Anyway, so you will not let any biases affect your ability to be a fair and impartial juror, right?
Yes.
And recognizing that people have biases is probably a big part of making sure that you can do that without biases affecting a decision.
Yes.
Long-winded statement, but do you understand what I mean?
I believe so. Yes.
And so, but on the other hand, I just want to make sure that being cognizant of biases and thinking about them, while great, wouldn't prevent you from making decisions
Yes.
as a juror.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something you would consider, just like any other considerations you have to make as a juror in reaching a decision.
Yes. Yeah, with bias and stuff, like I'm mindful of it. It's something I've been actively working on. Just in general, just trying to be a better person. The world is full of different people. People have different needs, different ways that they need to be talked to and addressed. With the bias thing, I do not believe, as I try to not lean into that bias, I don't think that I'm at risk of overcorrecting and ignoring my instincts or anything like that. So
Didn't seem like that person, but just wanted to ask, it's not going to freeze you up, in a sense, and not be able to make decisions.
right. Yeah. No, it should not affect my ability to make decisions. No.
You have some cousins that are in law enforcement.
Yeah. Yes.
And you said, they're just cousins. How often do you see them? Or
Well, luckily I just saw them for Thanksgiving, but not too often. A couple times a year. It's just a holiday type thing. Not as close as them with them as I would like to be. So.
And again, some of that is thanks to COVID, right? But
Yeah.
Do you have any concerns being serving as a juror in a case involving a police officer, what your family members might think later?
No, very much my own person. I very much value their inputs and their thoughts, but we disagree already on so many different things. Just like that's just the nature of being human. So like, I think we have enough respect for each other to like just respect each other. So.
All right, everyone. This stream is going to be cutting off now. But if you look at the chat on Twitch or YouTube, you'll see links to the Benjamin Dixon Facebook page and the Georgia Fort Facebook page. You can find this same stream on those pages. So again, we're cutting this stream off on Twitch and YouTube, but you can go ahead and find it, the same exact source on Facebook on those two pages. Have a great day.